Good morning, and welcome to First Unitarian Society. My name is Logan Walsh, my pronouns are they, them, and I'm a member of this congregation. One of the ways in which I serve it is as a worship associate. Today I am joined by one of our ministers, Reverend Jim Foti, and the worship team of Linda Warren, Drew Collins, and Daniel Carnes, as well as those volunteering as singers, hymn leaders, greeters, ushers, hospitality providers, sound tech, and lay ministers. A special welcome and thanks to our society choir. This is their Singer's Choice service, in which the members of the choir voted on their favorite anthems from earlier in the year to sing again. At First Unitarian Society, we question boldly, listen humbly, grow spiritually, act courageously, and love unapologetically. If you are visiting us today, welcome. We are so very glad that you are here. If you would like more information about First Unitarian Society, please stop by the welcome table located in the Commons just out those doors and take a left. We hope you will be able to stay and join us for coffee hour immediately after service, also in the Commons. And for those connecting with us virtually today, we are glad you are with us as well. And we hope you will be able to take a moment and watch the announcement slides after today's service to learn about upcoming programs and activities. We will now hear a special announcement on behalf of our Children's Religious Exploration Program.
Thanks. Hi, I am Rudy Moore. I have been teaching at the FUS program since 1990. I started as a high school kid. It's actually what keeps me coming back to FUS. Over the years, sometimes I was only coming in for the religious education classes and then departing. And not really staying for the services. I always love the services, but Sundays are full, weekends are full, especially in summer in Madison. I cannot compete with the announcement that was made for our same program 2 weeks ago, where we were graced with music and so forth. But I want to say something to hopefully encourage even more of you. If you've ever taught before and just are taking some time off, if you have never taught before, or even if you're just a yearly teacher, I'd like to encourage you to consider signing up for a class for this coming year. We're at about 70% right now, so we're doing pretty well already signing up people, but we definitely can always use more people. And I want to give you this message to encourage you. By teaching the following generations, the following kids, the kids in our program, you are having an individual impact that reinforces the faiths of UUism. We work on all the principles in all of the classes. We look at all of the principles, and we instantiate them. We make them into reality right then and there, and in the most important minds of all, the young minds that are going to be succeeding us someday. So, it's pretty heady stuff. I encourage you to sign up for a class. It's very low lift. We have sample classes that you can look at. There'll be people out in the loggia. It's not called the loggia, that space. Afterwards, and feel free to talk to them, ask them any questions you have, and then sign up, because we would love to have you help teach. Thank you very much.
And now, I invite you to join me in a moment of silence to center ourselves and bring ourselves fully into this time as we join together once again in community. There is nothing you need to bring with you to be welcome here. No right beliefs or proof of citizenship, no eternal optimism or clarity of conviction, no boundless courage or endless expertise.
You do not need to know what brought you here or how you will solve that problem you are turning over and over and over in your mind.
Your bills do not need to be paid, and your checkbook can be a mess. Your children may have been up half the night. Your hearing aids may not be working, and your knees may be creaking.
You do not need to be already perfect or even halfway to belong in this circle where grace meets us where we are, but does not leave us as it found us.
Where love resides in each of us, yet is somehow more than all. Where life still pulses and rages and heals and transforms, creating us and this day anew once again. Come, let us worship together.
And I now invite you to rise in all the ways that we do and join in the words of aspiration for the kindling of our chalice flame. May the flame of this chalice, the symbol of our faith, connect us to all who have come before us, all who are with us in body and spirit, and all who are yet to come into being. May it serve as a reminder of our unity and connection across all time and space. I now invite you to take a moment and turn and greet those around you with signs of love and peace.
Now let's sing our opening hymn together, number 1017. We are building a new way.
We are building a new way. We are building a new way. We are building a new way, feeling strong.
I invite anyone who wants a closer view of today's story to come and join on the carpet here. Oh, I think I'm going to put my feet right there. Yeah, okay, thank you. All right, there we go. All right. Well, good morning, everybody. I have a question for you to start off. Who here plays, I should say who I am. I'm Reverend Jim. I'm like your substitute teacher of a minister, right? I'm here until July. So I wanted to ask you who plays a musical instrument? Okay, we got a few here. What do you play? Bass. String bass? Yeah. What do you play?
Piano and violin.
Piano and violin. Yeah. What do you play?
I have my instruments at home, but I don't let I play them at home.
You don't have them at home. That's usually what we do. Yeah. You play a couple. That's good. Yes.
I have 2 instruments at home. One's a ukulele, and the other one's a drum, and they're both real.
A ukulele and a drum, and they're real, right? Because actually, when you're kids, sometimes you have like a pretend one, but you have the real ones. Yeah. Ask those
Well,
two.
I
Yeah.
did have a pretend one.
And now you got the real. Yeah. You graduated to the real stuff. Yes. Somebody had to ask these people. What do you guys play?
Well, I have an instrument at my house that I lost, and I forgot what it's called.
So.
I play it for a while.
She forgot what it's called, but she's got one. Okay. What? And you? What was yours? Did you say?
I have a big piano.
A big piano. Yeah.
And also I have a piano.
Okay. We'll do one more. Yes. What do you play?
Once I go to my grandma's house, we sometimes play the piano, but it's only when we ever go to school house.
Well, you play a piano at your grandma's house, but you don't have one at home. Yeah, that's how it was for me when I was growing up. My aunt had a piano, and I would play it there, but not really, because I didn't really know how to play it. So I was going to talk to you a little bit about musical instruments because our theme today is interdependence, and musical instruments show us about interdependence. And one thing that you may notice as you play longer in your life, I mean, sometimes you play alone, right? And that's easier. And sometimes you play with other people, and that's more complicated. It's more complicated to make music with other people than it is by yourself. We're going to ask the choir about that, actually. Because when you play with other people, you have to listen to them, right? You have to try to go as fast as they're going or as slow as they're going. You have to not play too loud or too soft, because if you play too loud, you won't be able to hear the other people. And if you play too soft, they won't be able to hear you. You have an interdependence with them. You depend on the other musicians to do what they say they're going to do, and they depend on you to play when they're going to play. So you have to pay attention to other people when you are playing music with others. It's more complicated, but you also get more out of it when you're in relationship with other musicians. You can make more kinds of sounds than you can make by yourself. You can play more kinds of music than you can play by yourself when you play with other people. And in the bigger groups, in a duet, a piano player might play for a singer, and a singer might play for a piano player. And a drummer depends on guitars and other instruments to provide melody, and the other instruments depend on the drummer to provide the rhythm. So there's a lot of interdependence. And sometimes the instruments themselves show us what interdependence looks like. So I brought this, which is my old violin from when I was a kid. It was very inexpensive, and it actually came with an owie when we got it. But that is just what it looks like. I am not going to play it for you, and we're all very thankful for that. But I just wanted to show you a couple things about the violin. One of them is that the strings are interdependent. They play well together. You can play more than one string at a time when you play a violin. That's kind of a fun thing about the instrument. The violin and the bow depend very much on each other. Right? You can strum and pluck a violin, but you can do a lot more with a violin when you have a bow. And the bow is very dependent on the violin, because bows can't really make any sound without the violin. And do you see this little thing right here? This is called a bridge. Do you see this little piece of wood here on the violin? It's a little hand-carved thing. It's called a bridge. And when I was a kid, I thought the bridge was attached to the violin. I thought it was glued to the violin. I didn't know. I was new to the violin. As it turns out, it is not attached to the violin. And this is the best example of interdependence. The bridge holds up the strings, and the strings hold the bridge in place. They can't do it without each other, right? If you took away the bridge, the strings would fall down. If you took away the strings, the bridge would fall down. And so violins and string basses offer us a great example of interdependence and how you can work together to make something beautiful when you are interdependent. And that's our story for today. Oh, see, that's why I didn't want to play it. All right, we will sing our kids to their classes.
Let's remain seated and sing our hymn number 128 in the gray hymnal, 128, For All That Is Our Life.
In following the notation of a musical score, every so often the players come to a rest. The voices, or the hands on the keys, or the strings, or the feet on the pedals all stop. It does not mean that the piece is ended. It has not even paused, for the silence is part of the music. For many of us, rest is the hardest demand of living, the most challenging necessity to actually treat as a part of life and not an interruption in it. So now, to make room for our private thoughts, or for the clearing away of thoughts entire, let us spend this moment together, resting in reverent quiet. Thank you all.
Prior to becoming your assistant sabbatical minister, I hadn't spent much time in Madison over the past 30 years. So I've been enjoying seeing what memories burble up as I make my way around town. My commute here to FUS takes me past several of the buildings where my undergraduate classes met. There's a fascinating mishmash of architecture along University Avenue, as we all know. But today, I just want to mention the psychology building. Like many new students back in the day, I arrived at college with minimal knowledge about psychology. My impressions were mostly stereotypes based on the sometimes questionable psychologists from movies and television. And so, as my fellow first-year students and I considered the several stories of uninterrupted brick that encased the north wing of the psychology building, and we contemplated the lack of windows, I remember us wondering just what kind of things might be going on in there. We got over our wariness, and I enrolled in the introductory psych course, which I believe was held in a lecture hall in that windowless wing. And it was there that I was first introduced to Abraham Maslow and his famous hierarchy of needs. Maslow's hierarchy is usually depicted as a pyramid, with things like food and water and air at the bottom, needs for the basic sustenance of human life. Above that is security and safety, then community and belonging. Then, as the pyramid narrows toward the top, we find things like esteem and accomplishment, and finally, self-actualization. Maslow once defined self-actualization as, quote, the desire to become more and more what one is, to become everything that one is capable of becoming. We might today think of it as being one's whole and full self, and enjoying the creative expression of that self. When my young mind first heard about this pyramid, it seemed as obvious as gravity to me. And even though Maslow's hierarchy has faced some questions in the academic world, it remains a widely used framework. It endures in part because of its visual simplicity, and in part because it can be hard to argue with the idea that you need air and water before you need anything else. As it turns out, despite my fine education, I still had a fair amount to learn about all of this. I imagine some of you already know this, but researchers have found no evidence that Maslow himself ever structured his hierarchy as a pyramid. The humanistic psychologist Scott Barry Kaufman says this about Maslow. It's clear from his writings that he did not view his hierarchy of needs like a video game, as though you reach one level and then unlock the next level, never to return again to the lower levels. He made it quite clear that we are always going back and forth in the hierarchy, and we can target multiple needs at the same time. So where did the pyramid come from, and how did it become so famous? The short answer is capitalism. A management professor at MIT named Douglas McGregor became the main proponent of Maslow's work in the business world. According to researcher Todd Bridgman, quote, McGregor saw the potential for the hierarchy of needs to be applied by managers, but for the ease of translation, he deliberately ignored many of the nuances and qualifications that Maslow had articulated. Then in 1960, the pyramid appeared in a journal called Business Horizons, near the headline, How Money Motivates Men. The pyramid, the article argued, could be used to generate, quote, maximum motivation at the lowest cost. Now, for Maslow, who was looking for ways for people to improve themselves and their lives, this development was a disappointment. As Bridgman notes, at times Maslow was frustrated that the business community treated his theory of human nature as a means to a financial end, short-term profits, rather than the end which he saw, a more enlightened citizenry and society. Motivating employees to be more productive at work was not the end that Maslow desired for the hierarchy of needs. He was concerned with creativity, freedom of expression, personal growth, and fulfillment. So the Maslow hierarchy that many of us were taught was oversimplified, misconstrued, and monetized. And if that wasn't enough, the plot thickens further when we look into the connection between Maslow and the Blackfoot or Siksika First Nations community up in Alberta, where Maslow spent part of the summer of 1938. Maslow traveled there to test his theories about social hierarchies and dominance. What he found instead, in the words of the writer Teju Ravalochan, were astounding levels of cooperation, minimal inequality, restorative justice, full bellies, and high levels of life satisfaction. He found a culture where wealth was defined not by what you had, but by what you had given away. Maslow estimated that 80 to 90% of the Blackfoot tribe had a quality of self-esteem that was found in only 5 to 10% of his own population. According to a present-day Blackfoot member named Ryan Heavyhead, Maslow witnessed a place where being self-actualized was the norm. And part of that was that self-actualization was not considered the pinnacle of life achievement. Rather, self-actualization was considered to be there from the beginning of life. It was assumed from birth that you were who you were supposed to be. In Blackfoot culture, says Ryan Heavyhead, it's like you're credentialed at the start. You're treated with dignity for that reason, but you spend your life living up to that. Maslow was greatly influenced by his visit to Siksika. And for Unitarian Universalists, the inherent worth of dignity of all people, the first UU principle, may come to mind. So this pyramid, taught to so many of us as a sturdy and intuitive framework, gets pretty rickety when we take a closer look. Its pinnacle, self-actualization, might actually be one of its foundations. And if we look at the idea of community and its placement in the middle of the pyramid, we realize that it too might belong at the foundation. If you don't have community, you don't have food, just for starters. And when the human community doesn't take care of the earth, we sometimes don't even have clean water to drink or air that's safe to breathe. Community is the foundation for so much, and it constantly reminds us of our interdependence. And in an unpublished essay from 1966, 23 years after his paper on the hierarchy of needs, Maslow himself acknowledged that, quote, self-actualization is not enough. Personal salvation and what is good for the person alone cannot really be understood in isolation. The good of other people must be invoked as well as the good for oneself. Our spiritual theme for April here at FUS Madison is interdependence. And I've told you this many-layered story about a made-up pyramid to illustrate the challenges of upholding the truth of interdependence. The truth that interdependence exists and the truth of its ubiquity. Interdependence is a reality that is constantly under assault by forces that find it incompatible with greed or with radical individualism. And Unitarian Universalists have a role as keepers of the flame of understanding. We have a role in reminding ourselves and others of interdependence. Why are some people so opposed to the idea of interdependence? Perhaps they're afraid of any kind of dependence. It reminds them of weakness or of childhood. And when one's national holiday is Independence Day, that word gets used as a source of patriotic and personal identity. Independence sounds strong, and it fuels all of our myths about self-made men and lone rangers and lone wolves and bootstraps and all the rest. And a note about those bootstraps. Many of you probably know this, but clearly not everyone in America does. The phrase pulling oneself up by one's bootstraps started off in the 19th century as a sarcastic comment indicating an absurdly impossible feat. Because, and feel free to try this right now, if you reach down and tug on the top of your boots, you don't go anywhere. It is impossible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. And yet folks are encouraged to do so, unironically, all the time. U.S. Senator Elizabeth Warren has a great quote about this. "There is nobody in this country who got rich on their own. Nobody. You built a factory out there, good for you. But you moved your goods to market on roads that the rest of us paid for. You hired workers that the rest of us paid to educate. You were safe in your factory because of police forces and fire forces that the rest of us paid for. Now look, you built a factory and you turned it into something terrific or a great idea. God bless," she says, "keep a hunk of it. But part of the underlying social contract is you take a hunk of that and pay forward for the next kid who comes along." Warren makes a solid case for the benefit of a healthy social contract and the reality of interdependence. Some people who start businesses and build factories understand this, and some willfully do not. And I do think it's willful, a form of pretending, because the obviousness of interdependence is everywhere. Bridget Bechtold is a UU minister and a sociologist, and she offers this simple illustration from daily life. By the time you have finished your morning breakfast, you have become interdependent with half the people in the world. You may have had coffee from Peru with sugar from Brazil, an orange from California, tea from England and Sri Lanka, a mobile device with coltan from the Republic of Congo, a waffle baked by someone in the Netherlands, a rose from Hawaii, and so on. She adds this: "The Reverend Martin Dr. Luther King concluded, that's the way the universe is structured. Reality is interrelated, interdependent." And being the social reformer that he was, MLK concluded, "We aren't going to have peace on earth until we recognize this basic fact of the interdependent structure of reality." That's because the systems that we have in place, nationally and globally, are designed, among other things, to keep wealth flowing upward to those who already have it. Designed, among other things, to hold desperate people in place in broken countries. These systems rely on a denial of interdependence. Dr. Robin Wall Kimmerer, the Potawatomi botanist and author of Braiding Sweetgrass, puts it this way: "Modern capitalist societies, however richly endowed, dedicate themselves to the proposition of scarcity. Inadequacy of economic means is the first principle of the world's wealthiest peoples. Any shortage is due not to how much material wealth there actually is, but to the way in which it is exchanged or circulated. Grain may rot in the warehouse while hungry people starve because they cannot pay for it." And it's not just people we are conditioned to be separate from. We are conditioned to be separate from other living beings and the earth. Kimmerer makes the intriguing point that we actually all start off our lives with the idea that everything is a person. She writes, "Our toddlers speak of plants and animals as if they were people, extending to them self and intention and compassion, until we teach them not to." I think she's absolutely right. Who among us was not raised on children's books full of trees with faces and talking songbirds and yellow suns smiling down from the sky? But anthropomorphizing isn't something that we grown-ups are supposed to do. The reason that grown-ups wipe the faces off the trees and take the words away from the songbirds is that it's much harder to clear-cut the forest when it's made up of all your relations. We are trained to talk ourselves out of the idea that non-human beings could possibly be our equals. White Westerners are trained to see objects, to see as objects what many indigenous communities see as relatives. The trees are demoted to wood, the mountain becomes coal, and the animals have their scripts yanked away so that we can put them to use. And as the poet Wendell Berry points out, in a democracy, we everyday citizens ultimately are accountable for allowing such things to happen. We Americans are not usually thought to be a submissive people, but of course we are, he writes. Why else would we allow our country to be destroyed? Why else would we be rewarding its destroyers? Why else would we all, by proxies we have given to greedy corporations and corrupt politicians, be participating in its destruction? Most of us are still too sane to piss in our own cistern, but we allow others to do so, and we reward them for it. How do we submit? By not being radical enough. So what can we do? What can we do that's radical enough in this time when interdependence could use some support? We know we aren't going to change any minds by arguing on social media. So what do we actually do? First, we work on ourselves and take note of the ways that we are programmed to deny interdependence. Language is one of those ways. It's one of the most effective tools for promoting the myth of separateness. In today's world, I recommend keeping a particular eye out for abuse of the word freedom. For example, a certain state just west of here might welcome you with new signs that say, Iowa, freedom to flourish. There is no reproductive freedom in Iowa. Meatpacking workers have staggering death rates thanks to freedom from regulations. And the state's rivers are being poisoned with freedom-loving farm runoff. Freedom to flourish is just one example of the doublespeak that our systems rely on to perpetuate the problems that Wendell Berry was talking about. Watch out for the doublespeak. Don't buy it, and reject it as loudly as you can. On the flip side, be sure to celebrate language that expands our thinking about interdependence. Dana Arvizo is a nonprofit executive and a member of the Navajo tribe. She's quoted in the book Decolonizing Wealth. She recalls a time she asked Native communities in the Cheyenne River Territory about poverty. They told me they don't have a word for poverty, she said. The closest thing that they had as an explanation for poverty was to be without family. They were saying it was a foreign concept to them that someone could be just so isolated and so without any sort of safety net or a family or sense of kinship that they would be suffering from poverty. Arvizo's quote reminds us that societies can be structured in different ways that reduce human suffering and prioritize the humanity of all. Another thing we can do, and this is something we have experience with, is to create communities of interdependence for us to thrive in and learn from. This is something Unitarian Universalists do. With our youth conferences, for example, we build spaces for teens to be fully themselves and to forge connections, to be mutually vulnerable and cooperatively supportive. I remember UU teens talking about one such conference and saying that the only bad thing was having to return to the regular world at the end. And as most of you know, our congregations can be communities of interdependence. I was reminded of this just yesterday morning when I attended a retreat with the incredibly caring members of the FUS lay ministry team. Like the strings and bridge of a violin, we hold each other up in relationships that make us stronger, in a covenanted community that can serve as a model for how other communities and how our world might be. And another thing we can do is celebrate successful radical acts of interdependence. On the North Island of New Zealand, there's a river that travels nearly 200 miles from mountain to ocean. To the Maori, New Zealand's indigenous people, the river is a sacred being. And for 170 years, they made the case for protecting it against the forces of colonization and industrialization. Finally, in 2017, in recognition of the interdependence between humans and nature, the Whanganui River was granted all the rights and protections of personhood. Interesting to think of a river having personhood versus a corporation having personhood. Money has been designated for the river's continued well-being, and advocates have been named to speak for the river's interest. It took nearly 2 centuries of work, which reminds us of the long-haul nature of some of these things. But the Maori vision is now law. Interdependence is the only reality. I want to close by returning us to Abraham Maslow, who learned from First Nations people, who never made a pyramid, and today's scholars say his famous hierarchy more resembles a person with hands and feet on different parts of a ladder. And Abraham Maslow, toward the end of his life, defined a new stage beyond self-actualization, a stage he called self-transcendence. He defined it like this: transcendence refers to the very highest and most inclusive or holistic levels of human consciousness, behaving and relating, as ends rather than means, to oneself, to significant others, to human beings in general, to other species, to nature, and to the cosmos. In the end, interdependence comes out on top. May its light shine ever more brightly.
I invite you into this time of giving and receiving, where we give freely and generously to this offering which sustains and strengthens our community here, and also our outreach offering recipient, who this week is Wilma's Fund, a project of outreach LGBTQ+ community center that provides relief for LGBTQ+ homelessness or support to prevent homelessness. Wilma's Fund focuses on short-term immediate needs through rental assistance and emergency housing, working to aid people in crisis. There are multiple ways to share your gifts this morning. Baskets now being passed here in the auditorium for cash or checks, or as you will see on the screen, that you can donate directly from our website, fusmadison.org. You will find our text to give information there as well. We thank you for this generosity and your faith in this life we create together.
Each week we gather carrying in our hearts the joys and losses of our days. We hold our own pain and celebration together with those of the ones we love. We share these here, knowing they are held gently in care and in support and in love. We light a candle for all those who feel isolated by grief, by chronic pain, by mental illness, and all others who are alone and lonely. To you we extend our compassionate hearts. We light a candle of ongoing lament for the violence which plagues our world. Fervently we yearn for peace here at home and around the globe. And we light a candle for all those joys and sorrows, hopes and dreams that remain unspoken in the silent sanctuaries of our hearts. I invite you now to turn both inward and outward and join me in an attitude of meditation as we hear a prayer titled, All My Relations, by the Reverend Gary Kowalski. Our time is short here on the earth. Around us swirl immensities of time and space, a universe infinite in all directions. How small our hopes and cares seem. Amid the panorama of creation, Yet we are not separate from the cosmos, but have evolved and grown out of it, like the leaves of a tree or the waves upon a sea. And our thoughts are its thoughts. Our lives are a manifestation of never-ending vitality. Our spirits a microcosm of the beauty and creativity of the whole. Fill us then with reverence and compassion for all who are our kin, cloud and sun, sibling and cousin, the multitude of beings who share this improbable and never to be repeated moment. All expressions, like ourselves, of the mind at large, the spirit at play, the dynamism at work, in whom we live and move, and whom we will never know. Amen.
Now I invite you to rise in body or in spirit to sing together our closing hymn of interdependence, number 1074 in the teal hymnal, Turn the World Around.
We come from the fire, living in the fire. Go back to the fire, turn the world around. We come from the water, living in the water. Go back to the water, turn the world around. We come from the mountain, living on the mountain. Go back to the mountain, turn the world around. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Do you know who I am? Do I know who you are? See we one another clearly. Do we know who we are? Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Oh, so is life. Ah, so is life. Water make the river, river wash the mountain. Fire make the sunlight turn the world around. Heart is of the river, body is the mountain. Spirit is the sunlight, turn the world around. We are of the Spirit, truly of the Spirit. Only can the Spirit turn the world around. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life. Whoa, so is life. Ah, so is life.
We build on foundations we did not lay. We warm ourselves by fires we did not light. We sit in the shade of trees we did not plant. We drink from wells we did not dig. This is as it should be. Together we are more than any one person could be. Together we can build across the generations. Together, we can renew our hope and faith in the life that is yet to unfold. Together, we can heed the call to a ministry of care and justice. We are ever bound in community. May it always be so. Amen. Blessed be. Go in peace, and please be at rest for the postlude.